Let's look at a few things. In fact, let's look at 5 things that we can do before we start painting something on the scale of this sort of orc bust. So I'm going to give you some of the tips and tricks that I would say start and get in the habit of doing before we start getting into a full paint on something of this kind of complexity and detail. And we'll start with something really basic, or showing you some of the basic things that you need to do, and then move into the more complex stuff that leads us on to future videos where we're going to start actually painting from scratch. So the first one is a little bit of a hang up from our PC days and our desktop based days. So I always was taught, and I still think it's quite crucial if you're going into any kind of complex maybe production orientated model, is to finish your modeling first before you do your painting. And it's a really good process even in a program like Nomad, where we don't have things like UV maps and texture maps. This is all what we call vertex painting on a surface. But it's a really good habit not to start any of that painting until you've finished your sculpting. So for example, with this one, if we just go to solo mode and we just take the head of the beast there, and we've actually got a layer set on here, and we can just blend that layer across like that, and that gives us just the grayscale of this model. Now with this one, it was a test for the new iPad, so I didn't go too far with it. I was knowing exactly what I was doing with the poly count, but it turned out well enough for me to use it in a few videos. But I took it as far as I wanted to, so I'd done all my primary forms, secondary forms, and then I left it at that really, so I didn't do the final skin detail. So in reality, I probably should have done, if it was going to go a little bit further and I was going to really go to town with this, before I started the painting, what I should have done is gone to stamp, should have gone to my alphas, bring my fall off lower, make sure I'm on grab dynamic radius, and I could then do some of the stuff that we're used to in a lot of the other videos I've shown you, things like these alphas that I use. And we could have really started to go to town with the, you know, with the last, the tertiary stuff, which is the final skin detail, and really build up lots of nice, you can see me I'm just randomly doing it here. So let's just do something like some of these scars. So we're adding much more of a, you know, a scarring surface and more scrapes and all of those, you know, those things that make a model, you know, come to life, the last little bits. We chose not to do it here. And in reality, we would have been much better if we had it done, because then when we went to the painting stage, that would have been coming through. Now it's just gone off with the layer there, but you can see what I mean is, even though this model looks okay, there's not enough underneath here, and I would have to now go back in and add in some of that surface detail over the top of the paint. And then you've got to be thinking all the time, should I be doing that with color on or off? Should I be doing it with you know, should I be doing it as a sub, which is an indent in the surface? There's lots of things that you end up starting to consider at this point. If you've done all of your sculpting and you finished it, including your final pass, when you come to the painting, it'll look so much better. As a general rule, not everyone will agree with me on that, and I'm quite happy to have that debate in the comments, because some people like to go back in at the end. And for example, I think I was just describing it, let's pick a color. So let me just switch to clay, for example, and we'll do the same settings. So we've got paint is enabled, you've got the color red, we've got the alpha, which is a dotty alpha, and we've got the intensity quite high. And just have a look on the chin, or no, let's do it on the head like I said. And this could easily be veins rather than these bumps. In fact, let's do that. Let's pick something that's a bit more like veins. So let's pick something like, there's all sorts of alphas here that we did with the T-Rex course. And you might want to then do this final one where it adds the skin and the color on the top. Now that is the exception to the rule. But before you ever get to this stage, you would have done all of your primary forms and all your secondary forms and then start approaching the painting. So this is the exception to the rule. I definitely, you know, there are exceptions to this rule, but wherever possible, you want to get all of those big forms down and get them locked off. And if you do have to go back and do your tertiaries with a bit of colour in it, then it's not too much of an inconvenience. But it's a great practice to get into. For most of your organic kind of workflows. Now we'll stay with this model and we'll continue on, because the next thing I'm going to talk about is before you start any of this kind of painting, you really need to think about the shader type that you're going to use, especially when you move into things like tattoos that we're going to talk about over the next few weeks. It's really going to matter the type of shader that you're using. So let's just quickly look at them. If you're familiar with this, you'll know what I'm going to say. So you've got two major types, which is PBR, which is physically based rendering, and matte cap. So at the moment, our lighting is being driven by 3 lights, and we've got this environment in the background that we can bring the brightness up and down on. So we could quite easily just use this that we've got, and we could move the lighting around and it works really well. But when you're sculpting, a lot of people like to just use the matte cap, which is this. And matte cap is the material capture. You know, this is what we see in ZBrush, this is what we see in Blender. A lot of programs have this where the shader is driven by an image, i.e. these images here on the left. And you've got to say to yourself, which one are you going to use the most? So if you want to change your lighting and really tweak it, then you need PBR, not this. If you just want to sculpt and you want more stylized and you know the look that you want, so it would be more, more stylized would be a great example. You might even go to comic, this kind of crazy. It doesn't work as well because we're doing the painting. So, you generally would not mix these two styles, because you can see the painting fighting with the lines there, and you would want this to be flood filled completely. So something more like, let me think, be more like this. So I've turned all of the other layers off. You can see there that it's still not good, but it does work better with flat colors, and we don't want that. What we're on about here is learning how to paint the surface, and we're going to focus on painting the surface. So you probably need a look at all these different methods, these different types of shader, and then choose what you want. A lot of people will sculpt in matte cap, so you'll do all of your sculpting like this. So I'll just flood this for you with white, so you can see what I'm doing. I'll come back to that. So a lot of people might want to sculpt like this, which gets all of you can see the shadows underneath the eyes and in the mouth. But again, it's driven from one of these matte cap images, but it's very, very stable, static, predictable. And quite often you'll see people, me included, changing these around as we're working and as we're sculpting. But when it comes to painting, would we use this? Not that often, because we can't control it. So what we generally do is switch to PBR. And if we've got PBR, then we can control the world around it. So we'll have a nice blue sky. We'll roll the lighting away from that face, and you can see the realities kicking in before we ever use any of this stuff, which is all of the post-processing. Before we ever get to any of that stuff, we would have the shader picked and probably the HDRI picked. So when we're going to paint, these are the choices that we're going to make before we ever get to doing the painting. So the first one we talked about is all about whether we've finished our modeling. The second one is which of the two shaders. So what's next? What do we move on to next? So we've just talked about it, and the next one is our lighting scenario. Now, if we're going to paint, we don't want these harsh shadows while we're painting. So what you probably want to do is move, if you have got lighting like this, is one, make it a lot less intense. so that it's not really affecting the look. So you could, rather than less intense, you could actually just delete them. So let me actually do that. So I've got rid of all them. And now we've got quite a dark look to it because the environment is not, the exposure was set really, really low. So you might want to paint with just a HDRI on. It might give you what you want. I don't think it does, and I certainly don't think any of these HDRIs give me what I would want to paint with, but that might be a way to start your painting. It's quite neutral, it's not casting too many shadows. This is going to, you know, push in these well, yellowy kind of colors. So whatever this HDRI here on the left is, that color, it's going to spread onto the model because obviously it's being lit by this image. So you have to choose this before you start your painting, and get over time you'll get familiar with your HDRIs, and you'll pick a couple that work for you really, really well. And then obviously get used to rotating them around. So 3-finger rotate for on screen, but that will roll your lights as well. And if you just want to rotate this, it's here, it's this one here. Now, while you're painting there, what you could do with the shader is, we didn't talk about it in the last one, but you could actually go unlit. So if you come over to material, you could say always unlit. Now that's extreme, so that takes away all of this lighting. Normally we're on opaque with unlit off. So I would only very, very rarely use that once you started to paint, and that would show you like almost like a Photoshop flat document with no lighting whatsoever. So just be aware that that option is there if you know should you need it. So something like that might be enough for you, but like a more diffuse overall lighting setup might be better for your painting. So you can add a light. We'll make it quite a bright bluey white, and then we'll call it a spotlight, and then we'll move it up above the character like this, and we'll make it just in front. We're not even doing a light rig. Bear in mind we've done quite a few videos on how to set up things like 3-point light rigs, so have a look at those in our playlists, or up above if it's there. So, and with our light here, you can go click on the icon for the light. You can say softness, bring it right up, cone angle, bring the width right up, and then you've got an intensity there, so you can bring that up and down. So if you crank the intensity up and you bring that light up and far away or further away, that'll give you a really diffused lighting, you know, basically the lighting that will help you understand what your model looks like in it, probably like broad daylight kind of affair really. I'll just roll it around a little bit so it's not blowing out quite as much. Move it quite far back. And then when you paint on that now, what you'll see is I'll make another layer. I always like to make new layers, get in the habit of making new layers, because if anything goes wrong, you can just, you know, scrub it back. So we'll use our trusty red again, and we'll get rid of that HDRI, and we'll just go back to a brush. So not HDRI, alpha, just go back to any brush, and we'll go back to painting as well. And then let's just paint on here, change it to dot type, and you'll see what we're doing there. So now, not that I would want you to paint like this, but what I'm showing you is there is what you're seeing is a it's a very natural looking lighting setup. So as you start painting, this would be like painting outdoors in a whitey bluey light. It's not going to be like you're in a, like this, for example, which is tungsten lights. This is going to, you know, or this is going to be your indoor yellowy lights. However you choose to light this when you're painting, it's going to really affect it. As you can see, as I'm changing these environments, it's going to look different, and then rotating those environments makes it look different again. So not only have you got to choose it before you start, you've got to be prepared to change it and look at it from different lighting scenarios as well. Now in the real world, we'll be rolling this around and looking at painting it in different lights, and we'd have possibly, you know, a spotlight over the top, that we'd use to paint with if you're doing miniatures, but we don't have that luxury. So this is just one way to build that kind of predictable look for yourself. So the next one is you're doing what's called vertex painting, and vertex painting is very heavily dependent on how many polygons you've got to paint with. So rather than working on this big guy, let me just go back to a really basic example and show you on a sphere. So let's pick a UV sphere, and then we'll go solo. So we've just got that on the screen and nothing else. And let's go close up in on it. And I must get rid of that yellowy look because I don't like it. So go back to our bluey whitey look. And then we will have a look at wireframe on, and you can see what we're dealing with. So what you've got is a sphere. We'll validate that now. And that means I can do whatever I want on it. So if I now paint on that, we'll keep it very, very simple. Paint, and we'll go with a nice blue. And we'll just paint on this. So as you can see, because it's vertex painting, and again there's a video up above, you can see that it's painting between the verts, the points. So it's not polygon painting, it's not painting each polygon, it's giving each of these coordinate points, each vertex knows what color it is. So you're going to need more vertex to get a smooth finish. It's a very, very common way of painting in almost all 3D programs now. So what you want to do is give it more resolution. So at the moment it's only 4,000 polygons. So if you come to topology and subdivide, paint again, you'll see it gets finer. Do it one more time, subdivide, and it gets finer. Now the same math is going on underneath, just a lot closer in. So it's like anti-aliasing in a way in a bitmap program like Photoshop, something like that. So we can turn the wireframe off now for a minute, because I can show you if I now go higher again. So we're now at 260,000 polygons, and it gets smoother again. And when you're getting up to the higher res, you know, you're getting up to 1 million plus. I mean, this is ridiculously high now, but on the newer iPads, 5 to 20 million polygons is not going to be a problem. But you're getting a much cleaner finish. It's still not brilliant, if I'm honest. So in fact, that's why, because it's only it's 30 million in the scene, so it's only 1 million on this model. So I'll subdivide it again to 4 million, and you'll see exactly why that helps, because now you can really get to see the edges. And this is how you're painting for when you're getting down to the level of things like veins. You're going to need that many polygons to get anywhere near the quality that you're going to want. So understanding that resolution is crucial. So having the resolution like we've just done and coming back down it, you're going to see the quality degrade. And again, this is very normal. This is exactly how subdivision algorithms work, and it's just subdividing it and rounding it. This isn't like voxel remeshing it, which is here, which would destroy and is very destructive to this kind of process. So you would probably finish your model at a level and then maybe go up a level should you need more to paint on. So understanding your level of polygons in the model before you ever start is crucial. So let's just switch back to our model. We'll turn solo off and we'll delete that one. So we're only left with the model itself. So now you know what I've just shown you, and then you're going to know that this is quite a high resolution model. And you can see in the scene information over here that we've got the whole scene. I think I already said earlier on, the scene itself is 12 million polygons. So this is quite heavy if you're on anything like the 4 gigabytes, the 2018 generation iPads or lower. You might struggle to get this kind of level, so you're gonna have to be careful with your poly count. But in here, in anything above 2018 with more than 4 gigs of RAM, then these polygon counts aren't going to be any problem to you whatsoever, and that will mean that you'll get to that level of much higher level of painting. Let's show you an example. So the wireframe gives you an indication of how many polygons you're dealing with, and then you've got paint on, and we'll just do let's change the alpha. We'll change it to another one of these skin ones. Let's do what we did before. We'll use, in fact, all of them settings will be fine for now. We'll use the ready color. You can see I'm just doing tracer lines there. I'm going to do, let's do a grab radius, and we're really low, and we'll bring it out like this. So you can see, I don't know whether you can see me doing that. I'll do it a bit darker, even though I wouldn't normally. You can see me now doing red veins in the surface. And because I've got such a high polygon count, I can really get a nice finish on the surface. So when I come to the point where I want to be using different brushes and I want to be using really different surface techniques, then you can see how that polygon count is going to really matter. So that's one to take your time with and make sure you understand what polygon count you're at any given time, which will either be in the stats here, or you can get it up here, and you can see in the topology it gives you the number of faces, vertices, etc. So, and that applies for each model, don't forget. So I've got the skull there, I've got the orc, and I've got the the hair, and they can all be painted on in a different way. So we're going to do a lot of this kind of thing over the next few videos. So I just want to be really clear that you know that we're not going to be working with anything that's low resolution. It's all got to be fairly high resolution to get out what we want. And the last one, I don't really need to say it, but I'm going to, is you need some serious alphas. And you can see I've got lots here. You can have all of my alphas, they're all available, so I'll put them down in the description below. This is mostly, or the ones that are mine, that is. This is mostly from the T-Rex pack, as I've said, so this is all skins and scales and things like that. But if you're going to get into the tattoos and that kind of thing that we're going to talk a lot about, then you're going to need some very specific tattoo alphas. And again, if you followed all of the other tips in this video, you're ready to start with our next kind of videos, really, which will cover getting all this together, ready to put really cool painting on the surface, including tattoos and including things like decals on the skin if you want that, and including things like really cool skin blemishes and things that you would do when you're doing production models in programs like Substance Painter and and Mari and all the bigger programs that are designed specifically for painting in 3D. You have to remember that this is an iPad piece of software. This is not yet at the level that you would see out of Adobe Substance Painter. And don't forget, we've also got Procreate 5 point whatever it is coming out soon, and I'm going to cover all of that as soon as I can get my hands on that, because we can take our Nomad sculpts hopefully and pop them into Procreate and paint on them in a dedicated way, as you're starting to see hopefully on the videos that they're putting out about Procreate. So your alpha pack is crucial, and the way you do that, you can either just make it yourself and just go, right, I want it in from photos, and just find an alpha and just bring it in like so, or you can put them in your Nomad alpha folder. And that's 5 things that are going to get you going with your painting. So the next YouTube video that we're going to do will be a lot about actually doing a paint on one of our models. So in the next few videos, I can start talking now a bit more specifically about how we get this skin and how we start thinking about skin. So we've got some crazy lighting here going on, and hopefully this video has explained some of the decisions to make before we start painting this sort of skin effect, or even a piggly wiggly. So the painting is the painting, whether it's character, creature, or environment. It's all the same skills. So we're going to have a look at that each video as we move through this sort of series. I hope you're enjoying these kind of videos. If you are, please give us a thumbs up. It does help us get in front of new artists that are looking for this kind of content. If you're liking it and you're giving us a thumbs up, then why not subscribe? We've got plenty of content coming through every single week. And please hit that notification bell, because as you know, that means I can pester you when I want you to see that I've got a video out. I hope everybody has a great week, and see you on the next video.